Android Studio's Git integration lets you easily clone existing repositories, making your own copy of the repository on your local development system. To work with this, go to GitHub in your browser and select a particular repository. I'm going to use a repository from another course. These are the exercise files for a course that describes how to build a simple Android app using Jetpack libraries, reusable components from Google. You can follow along with this repository or any other repository you select. On this page, click the Code button, and then click this button to copy this URL to the clipboard. You won't see any visual feedback when you do that, but the URL will be copied. Now go to Android Studio's welcome screen and click on Get from Version Control and paste the URL into that text box. In the directory setting, you can choose where you're going to put your copy of the repository. I'm going to change this string so that it doesn't represent the course the repository was from, but instead the application. And I'm going to call this plain old notes 4, because that's the name of the app and its version. I'll click Clone, and that downloads the files from GitHub and immediately opens the project. Now, in older versions of Android Studio, you would have been prompted to open the project, and if you see that dialog appear, just click OK. It's very likely that when you clone an Android Studio project, that you'll see this prompt asking you to upgrade your Android Gradle plugin. Android Studio is upgraded frequently, and whenever you download an existing repository, you should always click on Update if you see this dialog. This will ensure that you're compiling and packaging your application using a compatible version of Gradle. You might also see messages asking you to install additional Android Studio plugins. For example, this README file is written in a language called Markdown, the .md file extension is recognized, and Android Studio offers to install a plugin that would let you work with this file more easily. I'm going to ignore that extension, and then to verify that everything was downloaded correctly, I'll select Build, and then Rebuild Project. If there are any remaining issues with working with the project you downloaded in this version of Android Studio, and then you can walk through the problems and fix them one at a time. You might see warnings. For example, this one says something about Get Application ID Text Resource, but usually those warnings can be ignored. If you can build and run the application, you're ready to code. If everything was successful, you should also now see that Git tab appear, and again, that's new to Android Studio 4.1. The Git window looks very different than it did in earlier versions of Android Studio. It now shows a default screen that lists all of your branches. Initially, you'll only have a local copy of the default branch, but if you want to check out any of the other branches, you can do that from this window by selecting, right-clicking, and choosing Checkout. If any changes have been made to your files, you'll see this dialog pop up, and you can say Don't Check Out. And then to commit your changes, go to the tab up here labeled Commit. Alternatively, you can go to the menu and choose VCS Commit, and that'll also open this new commit window. Choose the files you want to upgrade, enter a commit message. I'll enter upgraded to Android Studio 4.1, and then click the commit button, and you'll be saving your changes to your local copy of the repository. If you see this dialog pop up, you can click on Review, and then you can dig down and see what issues exist. For example, in my project, I see a message indicating that there's a discrepancy between the version of Kotlin that's installed in my copy of Android Studio and the version I've declared in my project. I'll solve that by going up to the top of this file and changing this version number to match the version that's installed with my copy of Android Studio. I'll resync, and then I'll come back to this commit window, and I'll click Commit, and this time my changes are saved. So that's how you can clone an existing repository from GitHub, creating a local copy, and then as you save your changes, you can use the commit window to save them.